Do you want to know how good is the Revenant in u10? Then I'll tell you. Hello and welcome to another JMP video. I'm the host JonNario, and today I'm just going to talk about how good is the Revenant in u10. So this is just going to be similar to the other videos which I cover about the Neon Ninja, Vanguardian, and Dino Tamer. That's going to be on the Revenant. So the Revenant is going to be the perfect example of a character that actually fell from grace, and it's not because this character got nerfed or anything. This character is still the same as it was prior to the Delves update, but a lot of people just dropped it because it is no longer the main tank for endgame content. That is right now the Candy Barbarian. It used to be the Revenant for speedruns, now it's no longer the case. So a lot of people just dropped the Revenant as an overall character, and it is a shame because this character is still extremely overpowered. It did not get changed in any way, shape or form. It is literally exactly the same character that I called prior to the Delves update the best overall character in the entire game. And you could say that right now that this is still among the best characters in the entire game for all content. Now I will probably give that title to the Ice Age, but this character does a lot of the content better than the Ice Age. For example, dungeon grinding, Revenant is better than Ice Age. There's no question about that. Like, Revenant can one-shot easier, Revenant has good crowd control similar to the Ice Age, and it has really good momentum similar to Ice Age. And not only that, it is a character with extreme survivability. So yeah, it is that type of character. I actually am trying to follow the same formula, but I forgot to open my notes on my second monitor, but I do remember because I've done this recording like 9 times already, so yeah, I know what I'm going to be talking about. So I will try to just keep all of this brief, so if I forget about a couple of things, I do apologize for it, but every single recording that I try has been at least around 27 to 30 minutes long, so I wanted to make it brief, at least around 20 minutes or less, which probably is not going to be the case. Alright, let's start talking about stats. Here are the stats of my Revenant. Pause the video if you want. I'm not going to over explain what kind of stats that I do have. Same goes with equipment, attack speed, movement speed, all pieces of gear. You can use anything with movement speed, so if you're looking for an end game dungeon grinder or low delve grinder, movement speed and attack speed are going to be probably the best bet, but you can actually just use critical damage if you want and spam Bulwark bash. Personally use attack speed, movement speed, all pieces of gear because this character already has high damage, so I don't need the critical damage, so I might as well just benefit fully from the basic attack. I also do have the Nitro Chaser banner because of movement speed, Magifying Ring because this character doesn't have any energy, so energy regeneration is not a thing, and not only that, I'm also a 100% critical hit, so I don't need critical hit. Best ally in the game is going to be the animated jug, there's no question about that. It literally does everything that you want with movement speed buff and healing, and not only that, the damage plus light. Trailblazing Emblem because of movement speed, Martial Emblem because of damage. Even though I don't need Martial Emblem, I can one-shot even 1-star bosses without Martial Emblem active, but I'm still going to use it for world bosses and for 3-star bosses. I also do have Conjurer's Crucible Biome, my bio of choice, best win in the game, there's no question about that. Look at all of those stats. And then the sort of crazy Lunar Lancer subclass because why not? Honestly, I'm just going to mention this probably every single video. Paradise, Vampire Vanquisher are going to be your best bet for u10 type characters, there's no question about that. I don't care which character you're using, these are going to be the 2 best options for you. If you're looking for max efficiency, Paradise, Vampire Vanquisher. Some people actually been saying in the comments I should just explain why do I have the other Empower Gem ability. I normally don't explain things that I don't find that are necessary. So for example, Stun Burst is just not going to be a necessary Empower Gem ability. You can use whichever you want. You can use Explosive Epilogue, you can use Cubic Curtain, you can even use Bolt of Velocity for all I care. Pretty much the only important are going to be Vampire and Vanquisher and Paradise. Aside from that, the other one is up to you. And Class Gem, it is also optional at least for the Revenant, but pretty much all the characters benefit from Class Gem, so why not get it? So that's going to be pretty much everything regarding my stats and my equipment. Now let's start talking about the Revenant and my opinion overall on the character. So I do feel that this character is one of the best characters in the entire game. Probably is not going to be the best around end game, it's going to be around average to slightly above average at end game or late game, but at early game this could very well be the best character for early game play. So for those who don't know, I actually have 4 types of categories, which are going to be early game, mid game, late game, and end game. So early game for me is below 28,000 power rank. So below 28,000 power rank with average stats is usually the early game of Trove. Like at that point you're still getting your gems, you're still leveling them up to level 25, and you're still like at that point you're still focusing on your build. Around 31, 32 around mid game, usually you're just finishing your touches and trying to just perfect your build until you start augmenting. Once you start reaching late game, which is around, I'll probably say around 32 to 33,000 power rank, that is when augmenting is where you're pretty much at. Like you're augmenting and dragons at that point, and end game is pretty much getting your last dragon leggings and just finishing your augments, which is around 34,000 power rank or above. Now, I'm going to mention one important detail. This is my, at the end of the day, this is my own personal opinion on the topic. I have used pretty much all characters in the entire game. All of my characters are somewhat decently built and around close to 33,000 power rank. I have used all characters in the game, so I am speaking from experience. But even though I do say that this character might be the best for early game play, that might not be the case for other players. Like, other players might even consider the Tomb Raider the best character for early game, the Shadow Hunter, heck, the Vanguardian, or whatever, like Ice Age. Like, for me personally, I think that early game, that's where the Revenant truly shines, because it does have everything that you want for a character. The early game, it has damage, it has DPS, it has crowd control, it has survivability, and it has momentum. Not only that, damage multipliers are really high, so it pretty much is one of those characters that will get the momentum as fast as possible. Like, it is going to be one of the first characters that can actually one-shot pretty much all enemies, including regular enemies and bosses. So yeah, multipliers on this character are no joke. So let's get started with the multiplier. So the multipliers on the Revenant are going to be, with basic attack, is a 4 times damage multiplier. That is extremely high. Like, no character actually matches the same damage multiplier aside from Vanguardian, and the Vanguardian only matches it from the last hit from its basic attack, so the uppercut and or the 4th shot on range. So those are going to do 4 times damage. But aside from that, the other character that is going to be close by is going to be Vanguardian at 3 melee mode. Then after the Vanguardian melee mode is the Ice Age at 2.75. Then it's going to be Vanguardian range mode, Knight, and Shadow Hunter no clash at 2.5, so on and so forth. But as you can tell, pretty much all characters have at least 1 times damage multiplier less than the Revenant when it comes to doing with basic attack. So that is a lot. And then if you take into account that it also attacks on a 1.25 attacks per second, it is somewhat slow, but it's still pretty fast enough for you to actually just dish out pretty decent damage, especially in Uber 10, where you can just kill enemies in like 2 or 3 hits. This pretty much makes the Revenant a viable option for just spamming with basic attack alongside Spirit Spear, which I'll get more into that in a little bit. But yeah, the basic attack, 1.25 attacks per second for block range attacks in front of you, so the ground control is not the best, and not only that, it has really high damage. So yeah, pretty solid basics. Not the best basic attack in the entire game because of the crowd control, especially dealing with Cursed Skull. It is a problem, but it honestly is not that big of a deal because on the Revenant it does pretty much have ridiculous crowd control on everything else, so everything has a cover. Like, all of the other abilities has a cover, especially Spirit Spear, which is just a ridiculous ability. But yeah, that's pretty much everything regarding basics. Not the best basic attack in the entire game, but it is a solid basic attack that works well with the Revenant's kit. I'm not going to mention what are going to be the key abilities on the Revenant because all of the abilities on the Revenant are good. So yes, pretty much every single ability is key on the Revenant, so make sure to keep that in mind. Now, next up is going to be Bulwark Bash. Bulwark Bash and its class gem ability, Aegis Assault. It is going to be a ridiculous overpowered ability on paper, but it's not the best in execution, but on paper it's just ridiculous. Like, it does 9.5 times damage multiplier, only has a 1 second cooldown if you had the class gem. If you don't have the class gem, it's a 5 second cooldown. Like, it has a 3.5 to 4.5 block range. I think it's 3.5, and then it, not only that, it attacks in a cone in front of the Revenant. The only problem is, number 1 obviously is going to be the cooldown, and number 2, it has a half a second animation startup, so it is going to be a problem, especially for momentum building. A lot of the top momentum characters are going to be like the Knight and Vanguardian because those characters have minimal downtime during their abilities, and they're pretty easy to hit. This one, it is a little bit more tighter to hit the enemies because you actually had to time your Bulwark Bash because you had to compensate for the animation like startup, and they consider that it is a pretty close range ability. You have to just time it perfectly all the time, which it will happen quite a lot, or you can just go into the safe route and just go right next to the enemy and then just hit the enemy right next to it. But considering that comparable to the Knight and comparable to the Vanguardian, where they can just spam the ability immediately, yeah, those characters are going to have an advantage over this character. But basic attack late to end game is not, it's going to just kill enemies one shot, so it's not that big of a deal, honestly. Like, pretty much all of the characters' weaknesses already has them covered, or you can just easily fix them, which yeah, it is just a ridiculous character. Like, I will consider this character to have barely any weaknesses, if any. Like, it is seriously that good of a character. Now, Bulwark Bash, it is solid ability, spammable ability that you should be using if you can one-shot enemies. If you cannot one-shot enemies, then basic attack is going to be your best bet if you do have attack speed equipment. If you don't have attack speed equipment, then obviously Bulwark Bash is your only option, so might as well just use Bulwark Bash if you don't have attack speed equipment. So look at it this way: if you're a starter Revenant, pretty much use Spirit Spear into basic. If you're an endgame Revenant, you can actually just use Bulwark Bash to kill enemy one-shot. If you cannot kill enemies one-shot, then you can use Spirit Spear into basic or Spirit Spear into Bulwark Bash, which I'll get more into that right now, which is going to be Spirit Spear. Spirit Spear is going to be the best damage over time ability in the entire game. There's no question about that. It is just a ridiculous ability that a lot of people are not taking into account how good this is. So this is a 2.5 times damage, 2 attacks per second ability that is toggle, and you can use it alongside other abilities. And not only that, it also attacks in a cone in front of the Revenant, so it has really good crowd control. But aside from that, it also has some weaknesses. Weakness number 1 is going to be that it takes 5% of your maximum HP whenever you activate it. So whenever you activate it, you will going to take 5% of your HP as damage, and you're going to take 3% of your HP as damage every single second, which it will kill you. And especially if you're using Death Defying, this could actually cause you to use one flash accidentally. So be on the lookout for that one on this character if you're using Spirit Spear. But the biggest weakness that I will probably say is going to be, as you probably could tell, I'm moving extremely slow. You're moving at 66% less movement speed. So in other words, you will be moving at 1/3 of your movement speed, which is a big oof, especially for a character that is so good at everything else in terms of momentum. Spirit Spear is going to be a big problem for momentum building. Like, it is a big oof. Like, a couple of things that I will mention is, yes, you can actually just do something like this and go right next to the enemy, and then once you get right next to the enemy, especially if you're at end game, you can just tap the Spirit Spear button and just kill the enemy instantaneously, which will increase your momentum by quite a lot. But why do that when you can just use basic attack, which is a lot easier to do, and you don't need as much stat in order to one shot? So might as well just use the basic attack for momentum building if you can do it, if you can one shot. But aside from that, Spirit Spear is just going to be a tool that you're going to use to kill bosses much quickly, or in order to kill Cursed Skulls much quickly. So yeah, this is going to be the excellent ability for Cursed Skull and for DPS. So if you're a low stat player, like for early game, you can actually just use Spirit Spear alongside basic attack to ditch a really good DPS. So considering that you can use both of them, it is really solid. Like both the basic attack or Bulwark Bash, or heck, even the ultimate ability, which I'll get more into that right now. But it is a really solid ability. It is an ability that you can just activate it to kill a boss really quickly or kill Cursed Skull and just move on. Now let's start talking about Spirit Storm, which is going to be the ultimate ability on the Revenant. The Spirit Storm is going to be a ridiculously overpowered ability. Also, like pretty much everything that the Revenant does is really strong. Like pretty much that's going to be how it is. That's why this character is just so solid, and that's why I consider it to be the best overall character in the entire game alongside the Ice Sage. Like you can take or pick whatever you want. Like this is for me, for pretty much all purpose content, I will just choose the Revenant over Ice Sage. But considering that the Ice Sage is better for deep delving and for Leviathans, then Ice Sage I would probably say it's better all around. But for all intensive purposes, like dungeon grinding and low tier delving, which is usually what you should be doing for the most part, I will choose the Revenant over Ice Sage. And it is all thanks to pretty much all of the abilities, including the ultimate ability Spirit Storm, which is this ability that you see right here. Spirit Storm does a 1.85 times damage multiplier, and it attacks 4 attacks per second. That is really good. That is stronger than the Draco basic. That is super good. Like considering that this is an extra damage ability that you can activate it alongside basic attack, alongside Spirit Spear or Bulwark Bash, this is just ridiculous. It is an extra damage ability. I will not say it's better than Spirit Spear, because Spirit Spear has ridiculously low cooldown, and for the most part you can activate it whenever you want. But the Spirit Storm only lasts for 5 seconds. It has a 40-second cooldown. But Spirit Storm, it pulls all enemies around you. It hits all enemies around you. It is super good. Like the ability is just ridiculous. Like 1.85 times damage multiplier. It attacks 4 attacks per second. It spawns orbs around you that, like, just to put it into perspective, that this is my Revenant just using Spirit Storm. I'm not doing anything else, and you can tell like that is coming from an extra damage ability. I just killed that world boss without martial emblem active. That is really strong. It is super powerful. Like it pulls, it does damage, it does hit all enemies around you, it spawns orb that heals you, and not only that, does 1 times damage per orb, which is just even ridiculous. It does really good DPS, and you can use it alongside every single ability. And not only that, it used to be the case that you actually lower your movement speed by a lot, but that's no longer the case. They actually just changed that whenever they reworked the Revenant back in the Geo update. Like look at this. This is just a ridiculously solid ability. Like it is just seriously that good. So the only problem that I do have with Spirit Storm alongside everything else that I just mentioned is going to be that it takes 20% of your maximum HP upon activation. But pretty much everything else that that I just listed, this ability is just broken. Pretty much, it's just a broken ability that you can activate like something like this. I'm not doing anything, I just activated Spear Storm and I'm just running around with Martial Emblem active. I just destroy everything in this dungeon. Like, it will pull and kill enemies like really quickly. It does have really good DPS, and if you have enough stats, you can actually just kill everything. And then not only that, like on early game, it's just ridiculously good because again, you have the ultimate ability, you have Spirit Spear, and you have basics in order to kill bosses really quickly. And then you take into account the passive ability, which is just even as ridiculous as all of the things that I just mentioned. Like, number one, passive ability is going to be a really long passive ability to explain, so you can just read it right here, but I'm just going to put a TLDR on the passive ability. So the passive ability is going to be a debuff that actually gives you a lifesteal, and you have 2 lives. So you can just look at it this way: whenever you hit an enemy with basic attack, Bulwark bash, you're going to tag an enemy with a debuff. So let me see if I can tag the world boss with a debuff. You can barely notice it, but it's going to be like the Tomb Raiser's passive ability where there's souls around the Tomb Raiser. It's pretty much that, but on top of the enemy. And the debuffs actually just makes the enemy take 5% more damage. Not only that, if you manage to hit an enemy with that, if the enemy has been debuffed, you can actually just hit the enemy once again and you're going to get a damage lifesteal. For those who don't know, there are 2 types of lifesteal in Trove. There's going to be damage lifesteal and HP lifesteal. So damage lifesteal is going to be depending on how much damage that you do, that's how much lifesteal you're going to get. So pretty much like the Revenants, like the Vampire Vanquisher for example, those are going to be damage lifesteal. Those are going to be based around your damage. Tomb Raiser is also another character that actually has damage lifesteal. But there's going to be the other lifesteal like the Candy Barbarian's Vanilla Swirlwind, which actually heals you a set amount of HP. Depending on how much HP you have, that's how much HP you're going to heal. So Candy Barbarian's Vanilla Swirlwind is going to heal 10% of your HP. Same goes with the Chloromancer's like Explosion from the Blooming Pollinator. The Blooming Pollinator heals you for 15% of your maximum HP. So yeah, those are going to be HP lifesteal. Revenant has one of the stronger one, which is going to be damage lifesteal, which is going to be based around how much damage that you do. It is going to be a 5% after you hit an enemy with either Bulwark bash or with basic attack after you hit them with the debuff. So yeah, keep that in mind. That is going to be how it is, how it's going to work out. Aside from that, you're going to also get yourself a 2 lives for the Revenant. So let me just get close to the enemy. Let me just see if I can deactivate the Paradise. But the 2 lives on the Revenant is going to be the icing on the cake on this one. So as you can tell, whenever I just hit 1 HP or whenever the Revenant hits 1 HP, you're going to spawn that Spirit Wraith. That Spirit Wraith is going to last for, I believe it's 40 seconds. That's going to dish out 3.5 times damage multiplied with the Smash like ability and 0.75 with the regular attack. So it does have 2 types of attacks. So that attack that you see right over there, that is going to dish out 0.75. Like that Smash ability does 3.5. So yeah, that's going to be how it works out. Like it lasts for 40 seconds. It takes aggro, and not only it takes aggro, it doesn't take damage. It's just ridiculous as a tanking ability. But aside from that, you obviously, like as you probably could tell, whenever you reach 1 HP, you're going to recover 50% of your HP, and you're going to have a buff on your character, which I believe that buff gives you 2 times your health regeneration. And not only gives you 2 times your health regeneration, you also get a 50% bonus physical damage, percentage physical damage, by the way. For those who don't know what is bonus percentage physical damage, I've done multiple videos about it, but to put a TLDR, it is literally the same buff that you do get with Vanguardian's range mode buff. So yeah, that is a 50% bonus physical damage, so 50% of your base damage. But aside from that, that is going to be the passive ability. And to top it all off, you have a ridiculous lifesteal, 2 lives, and the cooldown on the 2 lives is only a 75-second cooldown. So that is only 1 minute and 15 seconds of cooldown, and then you are back again with 2 lives, with technically a death-defying with the Revenant. That is ridiculously powerful. This is, in my opinion, the best passive ability in the entire game. It is going to be that good of a passive ability that they actually made an empowered gem ability just to make it equal to the Revenant's, passive ability. Vampire Vanquisher is literally the Revenant's passive ability. You actually do get a movement speed buff. With the Revenant, you don't get a movement speed buff. You only get the damage buff. So Vampire Vanquisher is literally the same lifesteal that you do get with the Revenant. So pretty much, considering that the Vampire Vanquisher is the best empowered gem ability for u10 grinding, that goes to show how good this passive ability is. And yeah, that is going to be pretty much all of the abilities. This has been the shortest recording, and still 26 minutes long. Like, god damn it. Yeah, so yeah, this is still a 26-minute long recording. I'm done just doing multiple recordings, dudes. Like, this is just getting out of hand. Like, this is one of the reasons that it's taking so long to do recordings and videos in general, because I do so many recordings and I just want to make it as short as possible. So at the end of the day, I just ramble too much. So I go unscripted. So might as well just go unscripted, just talk about the character in my own personal opinion, because I feel that scripted unscripted commentary, especially on talking to characters like this, it doesn't look like it is opinionated based, because if it is unscripted, you obviously, you know, you're speaking from like the top of your head. That is your own personal opinion. You know that person is not reading something out just to put away an opinion, because opinion is something that is going to be preference based. Anyways, I'm getting way too philosophical right here. I'm just going to mention one thing. Like as always, I'm going to mention notes that I just did have, because I do still have notes, which I do that to prevent rambling, even though it doesn't even work half the time. But if I do remember the notes, because I forgot to open them, I pretty much cover literally everything, all the abilities, and my opinion on the character at the beginning. Now it's going to be how good is this character overall. Overall, this character is a solid character all around. For Uber-10 Type Grande, it's not going to be the best character for late to end game, because most characters are going to dish out similar damage, and if you do have Vampire and Vanquisher, you do have the same lifesteal, so it's not that big a deal. But at early game and even mid game, like, it is seriously that good of a character. Perhaps even the best character all around for Uber-10 type grinding for lower players, because it does have everything. Like I just mentioned, you have the lifesteal, you have 2 lives, you have a bonus damage, you have crowd control, you have DPS, and not only that, you have high damage multiplier, so it can help you out with momentum early on. It is a really good character just for early game. Like, it does have everything that you want. So if you want, obviously at the end of the day, it's my own personal opinion. Try it out if you can or if you want, and just let me know what you think on the character. But early games where this character truly shines, which is very rare because most characters truly shines at end game. But this is one of the few exceptions that it actually truly shines at early game, because it does have everything that you want from early game characters. Anyways, that's going to be pretty much everything. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking around. As always, leave a like if you want to help the channel grow, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and that is all for today. Once again, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Take care and keep on hunting. So the next episode is going to be on the night. Once I'm done and through with the night, that's when I'll start just getting like comment suggestion for the Discord server. So make sure to join in into the Discord server, and if you want, and just once I start asking the question inside the Discord server, just let me know which is the character that you would like to see. That is all I wanted to mention in this video. Once again, make sure to try it out, the Revenant, and that is all for me. Farewell.